to our deep dive into Dante's Inferno.
Oh, always exciting to delve into this one.
You know, I'm really glad we have this mix of materials to work with.
Yeah, definitely.
We've got the first canto itself,
Right.
the table of contents for the whole thing, the list of illustrations,
Yeah.
and some excerpts from a biography of Dante from 1837.
A good overview.
And I have to say, what really struck me was looking over this list of illustrations.
Oh, yeah.
Some of these titles, I mean, really evocative. Like,
Sure.
from Canto 8, there's one, Why Greedily Thus Bendest More on Me?
Ooh, yeah.
I mean, you can just imagine what that scene must look like.
Paints a picture.
And I think these illustrations, they really offer, a fantastic visual entry point.
Absolutely.
But what's really exciting is I think the opportunity to go beyond the Inferno itself.
Yeah.
And explore Dante's life and times through this biography.
Right.
So we can get a richer understanding of the context of the work.
Definitely helps to get a sense of the person behind it all.
So maybe a good place to start is with the structure of the Inferno itself.
Sure.
So the table of contents reveals this journey through 34 cantos, each representing one of the 9 circles of hell.
9 circles.
That's not just some random number, right?
Not at all.
It seems almost too neat and tidy for describing, the chaos of hell.
You're picking up on something really interesting there.
Oh, yeah.
Because 9 was really powerful symbolically
Yeah.
in medieval numerology.
Okay.
It represented completeness,
Ah.
often associated with the celestial spheres.
Okay.
Dante kind of twists that you see by connecting it to the depths of hell instead.
Oh, I see.
It's like he's saying, okay, here's this complete taxonomy of human sinfulness,
Wow.
categorized,
Interesting.
punished.
Yeah, so as you go down, you're encountering these punishments.
Exactly.
And they're increasingly more and more severe.
Right, they mirror the gravity of the sins.
Really driving home this idea of divine justice even in the afterlife.
You got it in a divinely ordered universe.
Makes you think about those consequences, doesn't it?
It does.
Sin and punishment woven into existence.
Right into the fabric of it.
Speaking of punishment, Canto XX4,
Yeah.
that describes reaching the center of the earth and climbing out the other side.
Quite the journey.
So it's not just descent,
Yep.
it's also a path to something else.
Potentially.
But before we get too far into that,
Sure.
let's look at some of those encounters that we were talking about before.
Okay.
Those illustrations.
Yeah, those titles are wild.
Like, how they made them bound at the first strike.
Ooh, that's from Canto 7.
That's got to be some brutal punishment.
It is depicting violence against others.
Right. So Dante's not shying away
Nope, not at all.
from showing us the consequences of those sins.
And it speaks to his time, too.
Yeah.
Period of conflict and unrest.
Makes you wonder, are there any modern equivalents?
Ooh, that's a question for our listener.
Right.
What would a circle of hell look like for 21st century sins?
Food for thought. Let's stick with Dante's world for now, though.
Okay.
So who are some of the figures we meet on this journey?
Well, one of the most famous and tragic is Francesca da Rimini.
Okay.
You find her in Canto V. She and her lover, Paolo.
Yeah.
They're swept about endlessly by a furious wind.
Oh, wow.
Their punishment for adultery.
So not only are they in hell,
Right.
but it's like a never-ending windstorm.
Their torment goes beyond the physical, you see.
Oh, okay.
The wind, it symbolizes the passion that consumed them, but now it's twisted,
I see.
denying them
It's
peace,
controlled desires.
leading to lasting suffering.
It's a powerful image, isn't it?
Very much so.
Even love, if it's, outside the bounds of morality.
Can have consequences.
Tragic consequences.
Dante's Inferno is full of these morally complex figures.
Yeah, what other encounters stand out?
Well, there's Cerberus from Canto 6.
Cerberus.
He's memorable.
Okay.
This 3-headed dog
Oh, yeah.
guarding the circle of gluttons, tormenting them with hail and snow and filthy water.
It does seem like a fitting punishment.
Right. For those who indulged in excess.
That reminds me of this whole concept of contrapasso.
Oh, yeah, central to Dante's vision.
Right. So each punishment
Reflects the sin,
showing that connection between action and consequence.
not just suffering.
It's more than that.
There's deeper meaning.
So that idea of contrapasso,
Yeah.
it's really striking with the heretics in Canto X.
Oh, yeah.
They're entombed in fiery sepulchres.
Right, symbolizing their confinement.
So physical punishment to represent an internal state.
Exactly like being cut off from truth.
Interesting how those connect.
And then there's the city of Dis in Cantos 8 and X.
Yeah, what happens there?
Well, Dante and Virgil,
Yeah.
they're initially denied entry,
No!
only getting in with the help of a heavenly messenger.
Really?
It's a turning point.
How so?
Well, the fact that they're denied entry at first,
Right.
it shows how severe the punishments are going to get.
Ah, so even in hell there's a hierarchy?
You could say that.
And the city of Dis is where it really ramps up.
It does what awaits them there.
Give us a hint.
Punishments for the worst sins.
Okay.
Violence, fraud.
Treachery. So sins against others are worse than sins against the self.
It's complex,
Yeah.
but there's definitely a sense that violating community and trust is particularly bad.
And this ties back into Dante's life too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like Florence was in turmoil.
Right, political intrigue.
Betrayal.
And Dante himself was exiled
From his own city.
in 1302.
Imagine that, exiled at 35.
No wonder hell feels so real to
And
him.
he lived through it.
He did. And that context,
Yeah.
it's crucial for understanding the Inferno.
Okay.
That feeling of betrayal.
Yeah.
It likely fueled his descriptions of hell.
Especially for those who commit treachery.
Exactly.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's not just abstract principles.
It's raw emotion.
Someone who's been deeply wronged.
It adds this whole other level to the Inferno.
A depth and complexity.
And I think that's why it still resonates with readers.
Absolutely, centuries later.
Reminds us that behind every sin,
There's a story
a human drama.
shaping our choices and consequences.
You know, it's interesting. He almost wrote the Commedia in Latin.
Can you imagine?
It would be a whole different work.
Completely.
Thankfully, he chose Italian,
Right.
made it accessible,
To a wider audience.
and really cemented its place in Italian literature.
And Dante was also a believer in astrology.
Ah, yes, the stars.
Right. Big in the medieval world.
But it wasn't just a hobby for him.
Nope. His belief permeates the Inferno,
Oh, really?
influences the structure,
Interesting.
the fates of the characters.
So even in hell, we're bound by forces beyond our control.
It's a fascinating thought, isn't it?
It is. It really is.
Suggesting destiny is shaped by more than just our choices.
Right. By those larger forces at play.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Makes you wonder how Dante would write today.
Oh, yeah.
How would he incorporate modern anxieties?
Great question.
It is, what other aspects of Dante's life
Yeah.
do you think are important to understand as we go deeper?
Well, beyond his exile,
Okay.
there's also his unrequited love for Beatrice.
Beatrice, the ultimate muse.
Right. She becomes a guiding force for him through hell.
Yeah, representing not just romantic love
Also divine grace.
and spiritual redemption.
So even in hell,
Love finds a way.
it does.
Understanding his personal life,
Yeah.
it unlocks those deeper themes in the Inferno.
Like what?
The power of love to redeem.
Okay.
The possibility of transcendence even when you're suffering.
So the Inferno, it's
Yeah.
not just about punishment
It's also about hope.
and transformation.
Exactly. That's what makes it so timeless and enduring,
The journey into darkness.
but also a testament to the strength of the human spirit.
I think our listener is starting to get a sense of how multi-layered this deep dive is.
We're just scratching the surface.
Now let's get into some specific examples
Okay.
of these punishments Dante created for those he felt deserved eternal torment.
Feels good.
We'll start with Filippo Argenti,
Okay.
who we meet briefly in Canto 8.
Right. He's not as well known as some of the others.
But his encounter with Dante is pretty revealing.
Oh, so.
Well, his sin isn't explicitly stated,
Okay.
but his rage as they pass him on the river Styx
Yeah.
really suggests a punishment for someone consumed by anger.
It's like his emotions are the punishment.
Dante really making a statement there.
Definitely about the corrosive nature of anger.
Another example of physical torment representing an internal state.
Exactly. Now, in contrast to Argenti's brief appearance,
Okay.
we have Count Ugolino,
Okay.
a much longer and more complex story,
And where is he?
the Ninth Circle.
Reserved for treachery? Count Ugolino. I feel like I've heard that name before.
He's a nobleman from Pisa,
Okay.
accused of treachery,
Mm-hmm.
imprisoned with his sons in a tower,
Oh, no.
left to starve to death.
That's awful.
Dante depicts him gnawing on the skull of his enemy,
Oh, wow.
Archbishop Ruggiero.
What a haunting image.
It reflects his desperation
Yeah.
and the horror of their fate,
It's not just physical torment.
No.
It's the betrayal,
the despair.
the hopelessness.
Dante makes you feel it all,
It's like we're right there with them.
experiencing it firsthand.
And through that, we confront our own capacity for darkness.
We all have choices to make
And those choices have consequences.
for ourselves.
And for everyone around us.
Precisely, and it's through those choices
Yeah.
that we shape our destinies and the fate of humanity.
Powerful stuff.
It is now, speaking of power,
Okay.
Dante uses the Inferno to explore how power corrupts.
Interesting. How does he do that?
Well, in the eighth circle, where the fraudsters are,
Mm-hmm.
you find historical figures.
Really?
Popes,
Oh, wow.
kings,
All those who abuse their power.
for personal gain.
It's like he's holding up a mirror to the powerful,
He is exposing their hypocrisy.
showing the consequences of their actions.
Exactly, and this ties back to his own life.
With the exile and everything.
Right. It's exactly for Dante, hell isn't just fire and brimstone,
It's a reflection of Earth.
where injustice is laid bare.
A complex vision of hell.
It speaks to the human condition.
All of our flaws.
It's what makes it so enduring.
We may not believe in hell, literally.
But we get it,
We get that our choices have consequences.
and that power corrupts,
That's what makes it relevant, even today.
even centuries later.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest parts of ourselves,
There's always something to learn,
something to ponder.
and maybe even some hope. We were talking about that ninth circle of hell,
Yeah.
where Dante puts those who commit treachery.
The worst of the worst.
It's interesting how he structures it, you know?
What do you mean?
It's not just about how bad the sin is,
Okay.
but the relationship that's betrayed.
So the closer the relationship,
The deeper you go.
like betraying family,
Benefactors
suffer the most.
really emphasizes loyalty and trust.
Huge for Dante.
And you can't ignore his exile when you think about that.
No, you can't. He knew that pain of being rejected,
By those you trust.
like those frozen in Gositis,
Yeah, the icy lake.
it's not just physical.
It's isolation, emotional abandonment.
Powerful image.
You can feel that loneliness.
that bone-chilling cold.
Shows Dante's skill.
Not just telling us,
He makes us feel it.
elevates it beyond just a morality tale.
It's about the human condition.
We were talking about Dante's interest in astrology.
Yeah.
How does that play out in the Inferno?
It's subtle, but it's there.
Okay.
The 9 circles
Yeah,
could be a reflection of the celestial spheres,
like an inverse cosmos.
where sin mirrors the divine.
So even in hell, there's a connection to cosmic order.
Like our transgressions are part of a bigger system.
Exactly. And it's not just the structure.
Oh, right.
The punishments, too,
Uh,
often use astrological imagery.
like,
The fiery rain for the violent
Well.
could reflect Mars, the god of war.
wow, I never thought of it that way.
Those layers of meaning
That's what makes it so rich.
shows Dante's intellect, weaving all this knowledge together
It's like he's inviting us to look deeper
beyond the surface,
into the symbolic language
to understand those big themes,
of sin,
punishment,
the human condition.
and through that exploration,
We understand the Inferno
but also ourselves.
and the choices we make.
It's a reminder that even with all this darkness and despair,
There's always potential
for growth,
for learning.
maybe even redemption.
Speaking of redemption,
Yeah.
it's interesting how Dante's journey
Yeah.
mirrors that process.
Of spiritual transformation.
He goes down into darkness,
Right.
faces his flaws,
And then
emerges into the light
it's a metaphor.
for our own
He
struggles.
can come better.
He's saying we have to face those demons
Acknowledge our mistakes.
and then choose the path to the light.
That's a really beautiful message.
It is.
Now let's get into some of the specific encounters.
Okay, which one stood out to you?
Pierre de la Vigne really struck me.
Yeah.
We find him in the 7th circle.
With the suicides.
What's his story?
He was a trusted advisor
Okay.
to Emperor Frederick II,
Mm-hmm.
falsely accused of treason,
Oh,
imprisoned.
and then
He took his own life.
so sad.
Dante shows him as a tree,
A tree.
gnarled.
Unable to speak or move.
It represents that loss,
Loss of what?
agency,
Okay.
self-expression.
Like, what happens with despair?
Right, and you wonder
well-
if Dante's drawing a parallel.
Between de la Vigne and his own exile,
Both victims of injustice
that personal element.
runs through the whole Inferno,
So Dante's own experiences,
inform his portrayal of hell.
like he's working through his own pain.
Through writing,
The power of art.
to process those emotions.
It's amazing how Dante blends it all together.
What do you mean?
The philosophy,
The theology.
personal experience, really brilliant.
He wasn't just a poet,
No.
a scholar,
Activist and a spiritual man.
It all comes out in the Inferno,
That's what makes it so complex.
and so deep.
He invites us to go on this journey with him,
An intellectual and spiritual journey
to grapple with those big questions.
about life,
Good and evil.
redemption.
That's how we really appreciate its power.
It's a reminder.
That even with all the sin and suffering,
There's always something to learn,
something to think about.
and maybe even find some hope. It's incredible how the Inferno still inspires artists today.
Yeah, like it's always finding new life.
Really speaks to its staying power, you know?
Those big themes, punishment, They're universal.
They speak to us no matter the time period.
And modern adaptations, they often reinterpret those themes.
Right, through a modern lens.
Reflecting our own anxiety.
Our moral dilemmas.
Makes me think of that question from before.
Oh, yeah?
About modern-day sins.
If Dante were writing today,
what would a 21st century Inferno look like?
What new punishments would he come up with?
What about for internet trolls? Or those who ghost on dating apps?
Ooh, magic circle. Where you're bombarded with notifications.
No.
But none of them bring you joy.
Or maybe one where your deepest insecurities are projected onto giant screens?
A digital public shaming.
That's terrifyingly accurate.
It's like Dante's vision.
Yeah.
Still gives us a framework for understanding ourselves.
Our own anxiety.
And our transgressions.
Studying the Inferno.
It's not just about history.
It's about human nature.
Morality.
Choices we make. The world's changed a lot since Dante's time.
It has.
But those fundamental struggles...
They remain the same.
You know, one thing that's always struck me?
What's that?
Is how Dante presents sin.
Oh?
Not just as going against God.
But as betraying our potential.
Can you explain that a bit more?
Sure. Think about the punishments.
Yeah.
It's not always just physical pain.
Okay.
It's also about frustration. Of unfulfilled potential.
Like what?
Like the souls in the city of Dissel.
Okay.
Eternally denied fulfillment.
So punished by their own thwarted ambitions.
Exactly unable to achieve happiness.
I see.
It gets at something deeper about us.
Yeah, like what?
We all have potential for greatness.
Okay.
For love.
For creativity.
But sin,
yeah,
it's turning away from that, leading to suffering.
So true. Isn't just fire and
It's
brimstone.
even like a state of being.
Spiritual emptiness.
Resulting from choosing the wrong path.
And that's why it still resonates with us.
Not just punishment.
It's about the paths we choose.
And the potential we have.
To embrace or to squander.
As we wrap up our deep dive.
Yeah.
What's the one thing you hope our listener takes away?
That the Inferno
Yeah.
isn't just some old text.
Oh.
It's a work of art. That speaks to what it means to be human.
Challenges us to face our darkness.
Grapple with good and evil.
And then choose a path.
To growth.
Understanding.
And maybe even redemption.
Beautifully put to our listener out there.
Yeah.
We encourage you to keep exploring Dante's Inferno.
Let it spark your curiosity.
Challenge your assumptions. And maybe even inspire you.
To create your own interpretation.
Until next time.
Keep exploring.
Keep questioning.
And remember,
even in the darkest depths,
there's always a glimmer of light.